Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Thursday, the 27th of March, 2025. I am Delbridge, Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and this is your status chat. Well, today's subject, let's just get into it, shall we? If you like this content, please go to CallDelToSell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you when each Friday's blog has been uploaded. Thank you. About 2 weeks ago, headed towards 3, a friend of mine who's in the loan business, he and his partner, they put out a video that, about the crash, are the signs of the residential market getting ready to crash. And I said, well, what gives you that idea in his little Facebook post? And he wouldn't answer. So that's when I thought, this is feeling sort of clickbaity, and it may be very effective. I did happen to see, as I was going through my YouTube stuff of my own, I did see it come up again, and they had pretty good numbers for what they normally would get. Here's my problem. I don't really like clickbait. I would rather be told something the truth, and if you believe it, that's fine, but give me the reason. In the very following post, it was everything's roses again, and we're getting ready to have the biggest boom, and you better be ready for spring. It's like, I think in this kind of a business, how people see whether or not, they may not agree with you. They may see you as being more negative than positive or more positive than negative, but I think you need to be consistent in your message. So today's little episode, we're going to go look at a highly reliable and serious source. I say that a little bit with a glint of sarcasm. Newsweek. Newsweek is not always a great source of news, I tell you, but the headline is great for, clickbait. U.S. housing market looks a lot like 2008 bubble. Real estate analysis, and this was yesterday? No, day before yesterday at March 25th. Okay, so here it is. It has been updated. Lots of little pictures. Newsweek, I think they're more about selling ads than telling truth. So that's just my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it. I don't know this Giuliana or whoever, Carbonaro or whatever, U.S. News reporter, U.S. News and World Report, Newsweek, whoever it is. Ooh, she's based in London, UK, but she's going to talk about the American economy, because that makes her an expert, being British. Well, some of the best people you may know may have been born in Britain. Anyway, it goes through this. A rising home prices, stubbornly high mortgage rates continue to keep American home buyers on the sidelines. The country's housing market is beginning to look a lot like 2008, according to real estate analyst Nick Gurley, at least for home builders. Now, I might go a little bit for that, because if you remember last week's episode, we looked at some of the numbers, and we see that home builders are kind of turning back a little bit. We were talking about it in terms of supply and demand. I mean, if assuming that we haven't had something like major fires or mudslides or burns or earthquakes or something, tornadoes, we're going to roughly have the same number of existing houses next time as we had in just the recent past. And we just need to add to with construction. Well, if the construction is slowing down and we're already tight on demand, that slowing down is probably going to help keep those prices a little bit higher, not bring them down. The difference is home builders, because they're dealing with their money or corporate money, they're able to have a little better analysis of the future than, say, people in the public eye, in the transactional stuff, like maybe I might be and others like me might be in, because we're pretty well much in the now, because that's all we can do. The past doesn't really matter all that much, because it's not an indicator of what's going to happen in the future, and the future isn't here yet. So all we can deal with is today, the transaction today. If it were happen today, let's go back 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. We'll go back in the past, see what it looks like the immediate trend is. But when you go to a builder, who may have, a neighborhood going in of 600-700 houses somewhere, depending on what state you're in or whatever. They have to look at a little bit different things than we might look at. So it's a take, but realize that they have bias based upon their job and what they're doing. Bias can't be eliminated, whether it's right or left or rich or poor or anything like that. It's just going to be there. But you do have to acknowledge it. It has to be there. So home builders, according to this Nick Gerally, at least for home builders in parts of the country, we're going to investigate local here in just a little bit, that have been building the most new homes in recent years, especially Florida and Texas. Hey, why isn't Tennessee in here? Because we are those three states, we are the big ones that people go to in the Southeast. Home builders are struggling to offload properties to cautious home buyers bidding their time for lower mortgage rates. Well, that's the problem. They're all listening to these experts who keep saying it's going to go down, it's going to go down, it's going to go down, rates are going to go down, we're going to go down, and people are just on the fence. They're just not pulling the trigger. Why it matters. For years now, the U.S. housing market has been midst of an affordability crisis that has kept millions of Americans off the property ladder. Well, I certainly agree with that. And it started with 2020 when they just spent trillions of dollars out of thin air to stimulate the economy after shutting the economy down, and they had, it's crashing, so let's throw some money at it. And that new money and the money supply, we've been over this so many times. It sounds like a broken record. It caused inflation. Well, the inflation part was part two. Part one was the pent up demand and people having their fear of missing out. There suddenly were a lot more sales over a period of time that were crammed into the release after we let people out of COVID. They ran prices up. Then inflation hit, and they're staying high. And inflation tends to keep prices high. It's the supply and demand issues which will bring prices down. Because usually inflation doesn't come down too much. We can force it down with, monetary policy, but it's very difficult to do, and it tends to hurt everywhere. But in a particular market like housing, once we get those prices up and the real estate up and the loans are coming due, people are going to have to make a decision. Home builders, do we build more homes that we may not be able to sell if things don't loosen up? So they're looking at it from their mindset, which is a little different than you and I might look at it. Here we are, historically low inventory levels as a result of underbuilding after the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. I got to tell you, I am personally just tired of hearing this as an excuse for everything. Oh, we never caught up on our houses. We absolutely do. Every year, by definition, we sell exactly the same number we would have as the market would hold. If they didn't sell, the prices were too high. So market theory says we make as many as we had. Now, maybe we didn't have enough to flood the market, keeping prices low with the law of supply and demand, but we did have enough houses, and we've been building the right number of houses. But in parts of the country, the inventory is growing. The situation is finally turning in favor of home buyers. And they mentioned Florida and Texas in the very top. They didn't mention Tennessee, so maybe we're in good shape there. So I'm going to give you this article for you to read, let you look at it, because they're talking about it from the home builder's position, which is a different forecast than, because that's a business versus you and I maybe buying a home for where we want to live, and we have to live there. Whether it's rainy or it's sunny doesn't really matter. We still have to have a place to live. Home builders that are building a product to sell, they have options that maybe we don't have as many of. So one of the things I want to do is I want to go back to the center panel. I want to see how things are going in our area, since they didn't expressly mention in Newsweek here Tennessee. They mentioned Texas and Florida. Let's go type in your go-to place for local market data, which would be CallDelToSell.com. This is my little website. You recognize me? Right there I am. And what we're going to do is we're just going to look at Rutherford County. Now, you have all of these counties that you may look at, and this is stuff pulled directly off the MLS, but we're going to look at Rutherford County entirely, because all real estate is local as you well know. And so it really doesn't matter what's happened in Texas so much unless you're wanting to sell a Texas home to move to Tennessee. And then in that case, it does matter. All right, I zoomed in a little bit. Let me look at this first one right here, live and active interactive data. We want to look at the days on market. Maybe I zoomed in a little bit too much. Let's zoom out just a few keystrokes. Let's look at average days on the market. Does it look like anything is significantly really happening in this? Now, this goes back to 20. This would be after the pandemic and we were just turning people loose. What were the days? Average list to close was 89 days. What is it now? 94. You can do the percentage. That is not all that significant, is it? Is that all that? You just look at the colored lines and get an idea for that. So the same thing on the days of market, which is, this is going to be median, I think. Median on one side. Yes, median on one side, average on the other. Average sales cost closed. And you see what we did right after we had that fear of missing out, and then the inflation kicked in. And then we've sort of been leveling out. And this is when everybody's been having their little panic attacks about, ooh, the market's going to crash, whatever. Well, let's look at inventory, because we were hearing about how inventory was historically short and inventory is getting long in the tooth and all of these things. Well, in Rutherford County, by the total county, we'll go to the green, which is the total. You see right there, total. We'll go to the green, the total inventory, 1983. Where are we right now? Now we see we got a little seasonal dip, 15, 7, 9. And we see that it's totally cyclic. That hasn't been disrupted, right? The active inventory, the blue line that we're going to look at, that did go down as we came out of fear of missing out. That came down. Then in about 22, we started seeing the inflation hit us real hard, and it's gone up. But even then, it's pretty well much stayed quite normal. And we can go through these. We can look at a specific area. Rockville's probably selling pretty well. Let's go see what they're doing. Oh, look at those lovely little graphs. All right, we came across, we had a little boom, and then we shot up in terms of our days on market. Maybe we were a little froggy for a little bit. We've come down, and we're still kind of settling out. We're not really tanking anywhere, right? We've seen on the prices. Look how we see the prices, right? When the prices were the most ridiculous, over asking, we had the shortest time on market. That's part of that fear of missing out and trying to get caught up on the supply and demand. When we kind of got caught up in this area, we kind of dropped down the other way. So this market pricing ratios and days on market inverted. Now, is that a bad thing? No, because that is the market working. So when we look at someplace like Newsweek that's quoting what's happening in Florida or Texas, it really just doesn't apply to us unless we are buying a house in Texas or Florida, or we're selling a house in Texas or Florida. It really only matters where we are. Now, we can look at Coffee County, we can look at Cannon County, we can look at any of the other ones that we have listed. My gut feel, which is worth about what you pay for it right now, is I think we're going to be okay. I don't think that our area is going to have a lot of the problems. If these problems, in fact, do develop, I don't think they're going to be right here. The problem is the prices are high, which is great if you have a house. It's not so great if you haven't bought a house, but buy a house and it continues this way, and it will be great for you in a couple of years down the road. If as long as it's your primary residence, you got to have a place to live. Now, when you're looking for that second house, the lake house, the mountain house, the house out of town, wherever you might be, that can be a different thing. You have some flexibility there in it, but for the people that need to get a home prices are going to be what they're going to be. And if we were to see the cost of money go down, it's probably going to be because we're having an economic stuttering here a little bit, right? And I don't think we're going to have that. So, it's like praying for the rain so that you can get water damage in a house you want to buy. It's just not self-serving. You can't pray for rain in hopes that that's going to be somebody else's misfortune and your good part, because if it's bad for them, it would be also bad for you the same way if you were to buy or sell. So let's hope we keep our sunny days and we have a green summer coming on after our spring. Remember, April, the third week in April is typically the big boom. So if I were to say we're fixing to take off and we do just what we would expect to do in April, you would think I was a genius because I predicted that we expanded. Even without these, as it was last mentioned as of the last FOMC, a possibility of 2 cuts sometime this year. And I don't remember them saying exactly by how much, but even if they count them by, they cut it by 0.25%, that's only going to be 0.5% off. It's very likely that our prices are going to stay stable or even creep up a little bit by then. So are you really doing anything by waiting? So at least be looking. That would be what I would say. At least be looking. Hello, I'm Delbridge of Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you are currently unrepresented and would like to know how to compare up to 3 properties side by side and room by room, then go over to my new YouTube channel, CallDelToSell. That's 1 L and Del, no spaces. Watch the demo on Real Scout and then call me and we'll set up your exclusive ad-free account today. All right, well, let's look what we did on last week's show. 3/20/25, we had 23,020 in the opportunities. We had 4403 in the under contract still closing. Both of those crept up, but the ratio at the integer level between them did not change at 19%. This week, 3/27/25, we had 23,2 in the opportunities. That increased over the previous period. 46,42 were the under contracts still showing. That also went up a little bit, and the ratio did tip just slightly over to the next integer level at 20%. It was actually 19.9, something like that. So to me, when I look at these little increases, they are bouncing around a little bit. They may be indicating a little bit of a cautiousness in here with that ratio increasing just a touch with a little bit more holding ons. But the levels are increasing as we would expect them to do this time of year, getting ready for the green season. And speaking of green, it's not going to be long until I have to cut my onions in my yard. I don't know if y'all have them in your highly manicured lawns, but mine is part of an old cattle farm, and I don't really dose it with that many chemicals. And this time of year, I get little tan tufts and little green tufts that pop up out of my yard. So I'll be mowing before long, and you could be too. You could be mowing your own yard before long if you would just get with me, and we'll get something going, and we'll see what we can get you into or out of if you're looking to leave and get something smaller or something bigger or better or newer or closer to town or further away from town. Whatever you want to do, that's your thing. Do what you do. All right, we'll see you next week.